Hello everyone, in this lesson I'll cover Python T-strings. For our objectives, we will understand Python T-strings, we'll compare T-strings with F-strings, we'll explore the template object, and we will define a T-string handler. T-strings stand for template strings, and they're used to handle and process input values safely into your program. And T-strings are available from Python 3.14. T-strings can be used to sanitize SQL queries or prevent SQL injection attacks, and T-strings can be used to escape HTML markup or prevent cross-site scripting. Here is a table that compares T-strings with F-strings. For example, T-strings are created with the T prefix, while F-strings are created with the F prefix. T-strings are more secure than F-strings because they can intercept any unsafe input into your program. In this coding activity, we will create a T-string. So recall that using T-strings requires Python 3.14. So I want you to go to python.org and place your mouse on Downloads and click Python 3.14 to download it to your computer. So once you've installed Python, you can open up the VS Code IDE. And at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the Python version number you're currently using. So I'm currently on version 3.13.9 from the Microsoft App Store. So click on this, and on the window that pops up, you should see Python 3.14. Click on that, and that'll switch to Python 3.14, as you'll see here. So now we can create the T-string. So let's come here and create some variables. So let's call this name and then assign it John. Let's go to the next line and create another variable named age and then assign it a number. So I'll go for 35. Let's create a variable named template and then let's assign it our T-string. So you start with the T prefix and then single quotes. So inside of the quotes, let's put together our T-string content. So I'm going to say today, and then braces. So this is our replacement field. So inside of the braces, type name. So we're making use of this name variable. And then let's come here and type is. Let's type another replacement field. And then let's come here and put in age there. And then after that, we can say years old. So this is our T-string. So you can see it looks just like an F-string. The only difference is we have a T prefix instead of an F prefix. Next, I'll explain the template object. The template object is what you get from a T-string, and it consists of two things, interpolations and static strings. Interpolations comprise a tuple of interpolation objects, and an interpolation object contains an input value, a replacement field, conversion flag, and formatting. So our focus would be on the input value and replacement field. So this diagram shows two interpolation objects. The first interpolation object has an input value of John and a replacement field of name. And the second interpolation object has an input value of 35 and a replacement field of age. Strings comprise of a tuple of static strings that make up the T-string. Template objects have template attributes, and they are used to extract T-string components. The template attributes are .strings, .interpolations, and .values. For our coding activities, we will explore the template object. We'll use template attributes. We'll iterate a template object and create a T-string handler to sanitize a SQL query. So let's take a look at the template object. So let's come here and write our print function. And in there, let's type the template variable. Let's run our program. So this is our template object. So the template object consists of the strings tuple and the interpolations tuple. So let's go over the strings tuple. So the strings tuple contains the static strings that make up the T-string. So you see here I have today, is, and then years old. And you can see that it matches the static strings in here. So we have today, is, and years old. So that is the strings tuple. So on to the interpolations tuple. So the interpolations tuple in this case contains two interpolation objects. So I got the first one here highlighted and the second one here. So the number of interpolation objects matches the replacement fields. So I have two replacement fields here. So I got one for name and then one for age. So let's go over the first interpolation object. So this first interpolation object has an input value of John. So that is the value that's assigned to the name variable. And it has a replacement field of name. So that is the name variable. And then when we go to the second interpolation object, you see that it has an input value of 35 and a replacement field of age. So that is the template object and its strings and interpolations. Next, we'll use the template attributes to retrieve T-string content. So we'll start with the strings attribute. So let's come here after template and type dot strings. So this will retrieve the static strings from the T-string. So let's run our program. And you see that right here, it gives you the tuple of static strings that make up the T-string. So we have today, is, and years old. The next attribute is the interpolations attribute. So this will retrieve the interpolation objects that make up the T-string. So let's come here and replace strings with interpolations. Let's run our program. And you see that it gives you the interpolation objects that make up the T-string. So we got the first one here and the second one here. And last, we have the values template attribute. So this will retrieve the values assigned to the replacement fields. So let's come here and replace interpolations with values. Let's run our program. And you see that we get a tuple of the values assigned to the replacement fields. So we have John and 35. Next, we'll use a loop to iterate the template object and extract its contents. So let's come here and replace this with a for loop. So type for, let's name the target variable item, and then in, and then template. So let's get the strings from the template object. So type dot strings, and that'll give you a tuple of strings. So let's type our colon and then hit enter, and let's print item. Let's run our program, and you see that it iterates and gives us all these static strings from the template object. Let's come here and replace this with interpolations, and let's run our program. And you see that it iterates and gives us the interpolations from the template object. And let's come here and replace interpolations with values, and then let's run our program. And you see that it iterates and gives us the input values in the template object. Next, we'll define a T-string handler function to prevent a SQL injection attack. Now, a SQL injection attack occurs when SQL code is appended or inserted into your application's parameters and executed to cause harm to the backend SQL database server. Now, what I have highlighted here is an example of a SQL injection attack. So this bit that's highlighted is where the application attempts to retrieve records from a database table. And this bit that's highlighted is the malicious SQL code that attempts to drop the table or delete the table from the database and then comment out everything after that. And what I have highlighted here is how to prevent a SQL injection attack using a parameterized query or bind variable. Now that's represented with this question mark. Now, when this is implemented, it will escape any punctuation characters in the malicious SQL code and convert it into a string so that it's harmless to the database. Now we'll define the T-string handler function. So first we need to import the template class, and we're going to use that to check if the argument passed to the T-string handler function is a template. So let's come here and type from string dot template lib, and then import template. Next, let's define the tstring handler function. So let's hit enter a few times and then type def, and let's name this sanitize SQL. Type your parentheses and a colon, and let's name this parameter template. Let's hit enter. Next, we'll create a condition to check if the template parameter is not a template. And if that's the case, we will raise an exception or display an error message. So let's type if, and then not, and then let's type the isInstance function. Type your parentheses, and then let's pass template in there, type a comma, and then pass the template class in there, and then type a colon. Hit enter. Now, let's go raise the type error. So if this is not a template, we'll display an error message. So type raise, and then type error. Type your parentheses, and let's have the message read, please enter a tstring. Now, when the tstring handler processes the template, it's going to separate the strings and the interpolation values from that template and then append them to their own lists. So let's go create those lists. So hit enter and make sure that you're outside of the condition. And let's name this list strings list. And let's assign it to square brackets. So this is going to be for the strings from our template object. Let's create another list. And let's name that interpolations list. And let's assign it the square brackets. So this is going to be for the interpolation values. Next, we'll write a for loop that will iterate the template and assign the strings to the strings list and the interpolation values to the interpolations list. So let's come here, hit enter a few times, and let's write our for loop. So type for, and let's name the target variable item, and then in, and we're going to be iterating the template object. Type a colon. So first we'll check if this is a string that's in the template object. So we're going to say if isInstance, type your parentheses, and then type item, comma, and then str for the string type. Type a colon. So if this condition is true, we will append the item to the strings list. So let's select the strings list, copy it, come here and paste, and then type dot append. Type your parentheses, and let's append item there. Let's hit enter and hit the backspace key. So the only other possibility is that this will be an interpolation. So let's type else, type a colon, hit enter, and then let's get the strings list first, copy it, and paste, and let's append the question mark or bind variable. So type dot, append, single quotes, and then the question mark. And right after that, we will append the interpolation value to the interpolations list. So let's copy the interpolations list. Let's come here and paste and type dot append. Type your parentheses, and in there type item. So right after item, type dot value. And this will get the value or input value from the interpolation. Next, we'll convert the strings list into a string and convert the interpolations list into a tuple and then return those. So let's come here, hit enter a few times, and hit the backspace key so that you're completely outside of this for loop. Now, let's type query for a variable, and then let's assign it the join statement. So type single quotes, and then dot join. Type your parentheses. Let's get the strings list, copy that, and paste that there. So this is going to convert the strings list into a string, and the results will be assigned to query. So let's come here, and then let's type a return statement. So type return. So we're going to return the query, type a comma, and then we are going to return a tuple of the interpolations list. So let's get the interpolations list, copy that, and we'll convert it into a tuple. So type tuple, parentheses, and then paste interpolations list. Next, we'll write the SQL injection attack or malicious SQL code. So let's hit enter a few times and then hit the backspace key so that you're outside of this function. And let's create a variable named customer name. And then let's assign it the SQL injection attack example I showed you earlier. So type your double quotes and then a single quote and then a semicolon. Hit the space key and then type drop table customers and type a semicolon and then type 2 dashes. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named template. And then let's go ahead and assign it an F string for now. So type F, single quotes, and let's complete our SQL statement. So type select and then asterisk from customers and then where name equals, and then let's put our replacement fields or braces, and let's get customer name, copy that, come here, and then paste. Now we'll call the tstring handler function, assign the return results to variables, and then display those results. So let's come here, and now let's create 2 variables. So let's call this query, type a comma, and let's call the second one params. And then let's go assign it the sanitize SQL call. So you can come here and select the function, copy it, come here and paste. And you can leave this as template. Just make sure that it matches what you have here. So let's go print out the query and the params results. So hit enter and type print. And we can have this read sanitize SQL query. Type a comma and then query. Let's go to the next line and type print. And then let's have this read interpolation values. Type a comma and then params. Run our program. So you see right away that we get a type error. So this is happening because we have an F string passed to the sanitize SQL function. And if you go up here, you see that we have this condition that checks to see that this is a template. So since the F string is not a template object, we get this type error. So let's come here and change the F to T. And now this is a T string. Now let's run our program. And you should get these results. So we'll go back and see how the sanitize SQL function is processing the template. So let's go up here. So the T string is passed into the sanitize SQL function and it gets validated for if it's a template. It is, so we do not get an error. So we have our strings list and interpolations lists created, and then we get into the for loop. So the for loop is going to iterate through the template object. So the first time around is going to check and see if it's a string in the template. So our string in the template is this part right here. So that bit gets appended to the strings list. So the iteration continues, and then next time around it's going to encounter the interpolation right here. So when we get to that, this else statement will run, and we will append the question mark to the strings list. And that's what we end up with here. And then right after that, we will get the interpolation value and then append it to the interpolations list. So this bit right here gets appended to the interpolations list. And when everything is done, we're going to have the string returned, the strings list returned. So it's going to be this bit plus the question mark. So you see right there. And the interpolation value returned is a tuple. So it's going to be this bit put into a tuple, as you see here. So our sanitize SQL function has now separated the strings and the interpolation values from that template object so that it can be safely processed. So we have this question mark representing our bind variable that's going to process the malicious SQL code convert it into a string and make sure that it's safe to send into the database if we had one. That is it for the lesson. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.